my childhood.
Thank you for listening to Ruin My Childhood. I'm Kat.
And I'm Mike.
And on today's episode, we are going to be talking about Homeward Bound, a childhood favorite of many people from my generation, which I didn't necessarily like, but for some reason watched frequently. It's one of those movies that was always on TV, and it was always on TV during, I'd say, the get-togethers that family would have. It's like one of those movies that you could turn on and everyone would just watch it. It was always on, I think when cable would advertise different channels. This was somehow a perk. And even though I was a kid, I think I liked it the first time I watched it. And then after that, I remember thinking, this is stupid. I mean, they're dogs. Are we just supposed to be reading their minds? Their mouths aren't moving. They're just looking, they're probably hungry. What is this garbage?
So I remember it a little bit different. I don't remember it being on frequently. I do remember renting this movie quite a bit. I think my brother really liked this movie. I do remember renting this one and watching, actually this one I watched more at my grandmother's house.
I feel like all you did at your grandparents' house is watch movies.
We watched movies or we played the Super Nintendo because they actually had more games than we did on Super Nintendo.
Dang.
But we would watch, I remember watching this movie, and then I think the sequel, I think it takes place in San Francisco.
There's a sequel?
There's a sequel.
Whoa, what is it called?
Homeward Bound, Lost in the City, I think, something like that. But I think my brother really liked that one, and I remember watching that one a lot, but I definitely remember watching this first one a lot.
I saw coyotes in San Francisco once.
Cool story, bro.
In the marina.
Do you have time?
They used the crosswalk.
But yeah, what I remember from this movie, I remember liking it. This is pre-CGI days, so like Katrina said, the lips didn't move or anything like, what is it, Mr. Ed the horse? But nowadays,
it would be creepier if they did.
Well, nowadays, so in the break room at work not too long ago, there was like Airbuds 17 or like Snow Dogs 15. I don't know which one it was. It was like a bunch of golden retrievers were helping Santa. And they have this weird, like, CG mouth in front of it, almost like a Robot Chicken, how they do the little mouths on the action figures. It was really weird. So I'm glad that they didn't have the mouths move. Like you said, it would be creepy.
Wait. So doesn't Airbud have puppies later?
I don't know. I've only seen... Or
his bitch has puppies.
Whoa.
But, like, you would think that this dog is pretty well taken care of. Why is it not fixed?
I don't know. I've seen the first two Airbuds, but that's not what we're here to talk about, Katrina.
Irresponsible, Michael. That's
not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about Homeward Bound. What do you actually remember from the movie? I remember a bit. Do you remember any specific parts?
I remember that they get lost somehow. I don't know if, like, their owners move and they get left behind, or I don't really know. I just know that one of the dogs was unusually unattractive.
So there's, like, an older dog who's, like, some sort of retriever. I think his name was Champ. Then there was a cat. I don't remember the cat's name. And then there was a younger dog. I think this was like the white dog.
I think that was like a ragdoll cat.
Maybe. I don't know.
It was cute. It was fluffy.
Then there's the younger white dog that's voiced by Michael J. Fox. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I'm pretty sure it was voiced by Michael J. Fox.
That was the unattractive one, and the voice was obnoxious.
Nah, not if it's Michael J. Fox. If it's Michael J. Fox, it's perfect.
I mean... He rocked Stuart Little, but this was a miss.
He rocked Stuart Little. He rocked this. He rocked Back to the Future, Spin City. He couldn't do no wrong. How dare you?
His head rocks back and forth. I'm going to hell.
Oh, it's okay. In our other podcast, Remake Rewind, I made a Christopher Reeve joke. So anyway, I remember they get lost. It's the the two dogs and the cat. I do remember there's a scene where the young dog gets porcupined, like he runs into a porcupine and he's got a bunch of like
do remember
pines
that,
in his
and
nose.
they get in his nose, right?
Yeah, and I think there's a part towards the end. I think
I remember that because I took some sick satisfaction from that.
I don't remember if it's this one or the second one, but I know there's a part towards the end where like one of the dogs gives up and they like don't want to go on, and then like they come back later to like save the day.
Yeah, doesn't the old dog like almost die? One of them almost dies. I know, like at the end, like they're walking up a hill and one is limping.
Yeah, that might be this one, but I know maybe it's in the second one. I think in the second one, the young dog gets a girlfriend and then like they break up, and then he doesn't, like, he just wants to stay like in an alley or something like that. But I don't know.
Yeah, I don't remember the plot whatsoever, but it was clearly entertaining. So even though I kind of like hated this movie, it was one of those that you just can't stop watching because it's on.
Yeah, I guess. I remember liking it. I remember my brother really liking it.
Is it a grand adventure?
I have no expectations for the movie. I definitely am curious as to what it is because I really don't remember it. Like I said, I just remember the animals, and then I remember the porcupine scene. So
I didn't like it, but I know that most other kids really did like it.
Well, let's just watch it and see if we like it now.
I mean, I don't think it's going to be up to Milo and Otis standards, but we'll see.
We'll see.
All right, let's do this.
Left behind with family friends.
Have a nice vacation!
And far from their home. 3 beloved pets take matters into their own paws. He's Shadow.
Something doesn't smell right.
She's Sassy.
Cats rule and dogs drool.
He's Chaz.
Get a life. Get 9 of them.
Now, they're determined to find their way back.
I'm going home.
Wait!
They're off on an adventure they'll never forget.
Oh, this ground isn't nearly soft enough.
Don't be such a sissy, Sassy.
It's an untamed world full of surprises.
What's that smell? Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo! I never thought anything could smell too much.
P.U.
Where nothing comes easy.
Hey, Scram, get your own fish.
Careful, pup.
Help!
And danger waits at every turn.
I gotta tell you, domesticated animals wouldn't stand a chance at it.
Where the forces of nature will test their ability to survive.
What?
It will be an incredible journey home.
Hey, guys, wait up.
Come on!
Home is just over that mountain.
Critics agree. 2 thumbs up, say Siskel and Ebert. A masterpiece of family entertainment, says ABC TV. In the classic tradition of Walt Disney Entertainment comes Homeward Bound, The Incredible Journey.
All right, we are back from watching that, and it is actually worse than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a little bit cheeky and maybe more enjoyable, considering I remember adults in my life watching this, but I'm pretty sure they would just turn this on so they would have an opportunity to just sleep with their eyes open.
So earlier in the episode, I said that Michael J. Fox can do no wrong.
Oh, God.
And I take that back right now.
See? He is obnoxious, and I hate him in this movie.
I think this was his first voiceover role, because I know later on he did Atlantis and Stuart Little, and he was good in this. I think it was the issue of him. This is the first time he was probably in a recording booth, and he did so much of it because he was the narrator. It just didn't work. It was painful for me to watch. I think I looked over at you and at least said 3 times, I was like, I hate this.
I remember hating it just as much when I was a kid.
That's so weird. So why did we watch this if you hated it? I thought the whole point of this podcast is to take things we liked and see if they hold up.
Well, I thought you had seen it as a kid. But no, I remember my siblings really liked it, and anytime I was with a group of other kids my age, this movie seemed to be on, and I remember watching it very, very frequently. I've seen this movie at least 6 times, and so I thought there must be something enjoyable about it, or heartwarming, or, it was an interesting, engaging adventure flick. But, I mean, the scenery is beautiful. We didn't watch it on widescreen because it wasn't available. You have to get that on iTunes or Laserdisc. But the scenery was gorgeous. I'll give it that. It was beautiful, prettier than I remember in that regard.
You know what's gnarly?
What?
So I'm we didn't watch the credits, but I'm sure at the end of it was no animal was harmed. But the cat was gnawing on the dog's face when they're trying to get the porcupine quills out. It seemed like they definitely threw a cat into a river.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that water, the churning water, it was definitely not safe conditions for the cat that they threw in. It goes underwater several times and looks genuinely freaked out. The dogs were probably okay, but that poor cat, it was going under. There's no way this was safe while they were filming.
Well, and then they also had God, this movie just made no sense. So out in the wild, they encounter numerous beasts. Chance is the young dog voiced by Michael J. Fox. He sees two little black bear cubs, and they're eating fish, so he chases them off, and then they see a giant bear, and then they end up running away. Then they encounter
Oh, that bear was so cute, though.
They encounter a mountain lion. They got this mountain lion to go on this rock that was teetering over another rock like a seesaw, and they jumped on the rock. Then they made the mountain lion like catapult off a cliff into a river. Oh my god, this was so bad.
Well, they set that up with the scene at the beginning of the movie
when
where the girl is trying to get the cat to go on the other end of the seesaw, and then the dog full on launches it. But like, to get that shot, they clearly had to throw a cat. And then the scene with the mountain lion flying through the air is just as awkward and hilarious. But then you see whatever they threw off the cliff fall into the river, and it just like tumbles butt over head into the water in a way that no living creature really would. Like, I think they threw a stuffed puma into this river.
You know what I hated about this movie? It made no sense to me.
Everything.
Well, besides everything, these are talking animals, right? And at the beginning of the podcast, we said that
they're not talking. They're communicating as animals do, telepathically and through body language, and we're just listening in.
Right. So this is one of the few animal movies where I guess like that talk where they don't have moving mouths, which having them do that was kind of, actually to me it felt off-putting because you were just like staring at an animal, just staring at a camera.
I keep getting distracted by how boring it must have been to film.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's not even fun to watch when they're just sitting there talking. Like, it's kind of interesting when you see them running around and playing and going, jumping off of things. But when they're just standing there communicating, it's weird. But the thing that was most off-putting to me was that their vocabulary. So there's several points when human characters are talking to the dogs and the cat, and they're like, we don't understand what you're saying. We don't get it. They always do this. Like, he's talking to the kid on the phone, and he's like, this bugs me because I never understand them. And then the cat's like, well, just placate him. Just say something. So then he barks into the telephone, right? But Michael J. Fox's character, Chance, has all this vocabulary. It's like, well, if they don't understand humans, they don't understand what things mean, how can they say that? So they use the word polyester. And then they also call the mountain lion Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like, they know who Schwarzenegger is. Like, how would he know who Arnold Schwarzenegger is if they don't understand human speech?
Right. And the polyblend thing is way over his head, for sure.
For sure.
No, I think like what's awkward about this is like, remember when you were a kid and you would play with your toys and you just sort of shake them a little bit and make them talk? Like, as a kid, I had a ton of Barbies. And whenever it came time to actually play with them like that, I'm like, this is so freaking lame. I loved dressing them. I loved setting up their houses and their rooms and all the details and stuff like that. But when it came time to play with them, it was just kind of like, are we narrating? I don't see the point.
I really don't know what else to say about this movie. It really wasn't very good. Oh, there was something you brought up that made no sense, and I kind of like didn't doze off, but kind of shut off my brain when this happened. But I guess Jean Smart plays a friend of the family who's like watching over the animals while the main family is off in San Francisco for a few weeks.
What do I know her from?
She's in a lot of things. She was in like Designing Women. She was the love interest in the last season of Frasier. Not last season of Frasier. She was one of the love interests in like the last couple seasons of Frasier. She's in a lot of stuff. She was in everything in the 90s.
Well, she's no Jean Triplehorn.
No, never. Nobody compares. But
except for that other actress who looks just like Jean Triplehorn.
I know. Oh, give me a second. I don't remember. I know exactly who you're talking about, but I can't think of her name. It was at the tip of my tongue. Anyway, if I remember it, I'll say it before the episode's over. But
all right.
Well, man, you made me completely lose my train of thought. Oh, so she is watching the animals, and she leaves a note for her friend because she has to leave for a couple of days to go do a cattle run. So first off, why are you going to leave your animals with like a friend who's supposed to watch them while you're out of town, and then that person's going to go out of town? That doesn't really make sense. So she leaves a note for her friend to feed the animals, the horses and the cats and the dogs. And she mentions in the note that she feels bad.
Marcia Gay Harden. I worked with her.
Marcia Gay, yeah, that's her.
She told us what the wait was when
we went to go vote, and she's like, it's like 3.5 hours. It's not worth it. That's right.
Yeah.
So.
And I had worked with her like 2 days before. That's hilarious. Sorry.
Basically, she leaves a note saying like, man, Shadow, which is the older dog, he seems really homesick. I feel really bad leaving him. And so this person who was helping out just assumed that she took all the animals, even though the note doesn't explicitly say. So like, I
think that kind of makes sense that he assumed that, though.
Yeah, but you only mentioned one, and you didn't explicitly say, like, when you have an agreement to come and feed the animals, and it doesn't explicitly say, like, hey, I took these animals, like, you should maybe be a little alarmed.
Here's the thing, though, about the country. Like, Horses are big ticket items. Like, sure, they love their horses, they're emotionally attached to them and everything, but horses are an investment. And if you can show them, you get a return on that investment. So you take really freaking good care of your horses. Dogs and cats, like, no one is buying pet insurance if they live in the country. Dogs and cats are totally disposable. It's sad but true, especially if you live out where they are, where apparently there are pumas, bears, I mean, all kinds of stuff. Like, you know, a coyote's going to carry off your cat. You just expect your animals to die fairly shortly, and that's that. They would not be anywhere near as worried about these animals as they are in this movie if this were real life. They definitely would not call park rangers. I mean, if they knew the guy, they might be like, hey, Frank, I mean, if you see these domesticated animals, give me a call. But they would not be launching a search effort for these animals.
Well, they didn't,
people in
though.
the country don't really care that much.
Well, they didn't. It just happened to be that this family did send posters, and they're like, "Oh, we recognize it." So they didn't really do a search, like that.
Yeah, but I mean, like, she calls the park ranger, and she's like,
Oh,
they
yeah,
can't
that's right.
do
Gene
anything. Like,
Smart's
she would have
character
known
did.
they can't do
Yeah.
anything, really.
Like, this movie was under 90 minutes, and it did not seem that way.
It felt much, much longer.
All the weird puns that an animal wouldn't be able to make.
I mean, but, like, really? Do you think the animals are... Michael, do you think the animals have an inner dialogue in English? What's happening here?
Potentially, I think in English. Maybe
What?
Hagrid, our cat, thinks in English, because I don't know. I'm just kidding. No, it just didn't make sense. And even for a kid's movie, like I while we were watching this movie, I was trying to make heads or tails of it. And I was like reading reviews, and like it has an 82% on Rotten Tomato, and like Roger Ebert was like, this movie's definitely geared for children, but there's a certain charm to it, and you'll probably like it yourself if you watch it with a child. And I'm like,
No.
if we were watching this with our nephews, I would have just left them in the room and let them watch it.
My
and, like,
nephews wouldn't have even watched this because they are cynical just like I was when I was a child.
I think Ephraim would watch it and just make fun of it. I think the others would sit there and watch it, and they'd be making fun of it. They'd sit there and watch it and be like, I don't know. But I would just be like on my tablet watching this.
Thinking back, I mean, I hated a lot of things. I was a weird kid. We know this. But from my memories of watching this as frequently as we did and with the people that we watched it with, I honestly thought that this was not going to be as bad as it is. But it's genuinely terrible and painful, and I would not watch this again.
You know what's weird? This was a Disney movie. This did not
It
seem up to the
was.
quality of a Disney movie. But then again, this was before, like, this was right around the time of the renaissance of the animation. This was just after Beauty and the Beast, around the time of Aladdin, before...
This was before good Disney, like The Parent Trap, the good Disney family live-action films.
Well, exact. So this was before the Santa Claus. So this was before, like, the renaissance of that. Like, before Tim Allen came around and saved Disney.
Would we call it a renaissance?
Yes.
I'd say more like a disco era.
Not like a renaissance here, but it's like the rebirth of it, because like Disney still makes good live action movies now, and there was a period of time where they didn't. So I think this was right on the tail end of them making not so good movies, right before they started doing, like, the Santa Claus is a really fun movie. The Parent Trap, although we'll probably do that in a future episode, I remember being pretty good, and then they started coming out with a bunch
Jingle
of
All
stuff.
the Way a Disney movie?
No, it was not.
That's disappointing.
That was too terrible to be even. God.
What else do we know the voice actor who plays Shadow from?
So he was in Cocoon.
I love that movie.
Yeah, he's one of the...
See, as a kid, I loved Cocoon. I don't know what I was doing watching Cocoon, but I loved it.
So that voice actor actually passed away, or that actor passed away the same year that this movie came out, I believe.
Seriously?
I think so.
Oh, that's very sad.
And so clearly they got a second actor for the second one, but I'm so surprised that this one made enough money to do a second movie. Like, I don't know what the budget was. It must have not been too high. I mean, getting animals isn't that expensive.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Dude, okay. If I spend 6 hours on set with a dog, that dog is earning more money than I am.
Yeah, but it's worth it.
And it's not just one dog. They always have multiples.
Anyway, this movie made $42 million. I looked it up on on Wikipedia just a few minutes ago. But it made $42 million, which means it made enough money to warrant a sequel 3 years later. The sequel came out in 1996, which was, I was right, it was Lost in San Francisco.
I think it looks like a pretty big budget, honestly. The production value, it has production value. It has these great sweeping landscapes. It's beautiful. It's high quality. You know, the audio is good. They used good cameras. So, like, the production quality is there. It's a good movie. They had high-profile voice actors, which is probably why this did so well, because having their name on the film poster, I mean, like, this was back in the day when people really did go to see movies for specific actors way more frequently than they do now.
So the second movie made $55 million worldwide. So I'm assuming less than 55. I'm going to assume it was less than $40 million to make this movie.
Yeah, it had to have a pretty good budget. I mean, nothing could have been enough to save the script, the one-liners, and that freaking Michael J. Fox's annoying voice for that annoying character.
So much happened so quickly. Like, kid movies can be under 90 minutes, but like most live action movies, if you can't get to 90 minutes, you probably aren't doing something right. This movie came in at like 88 minutes, including the credits, and they had a lot happen. So they had the opening scene with the wedding. They had the moving scene. They had them go to the farm. They had them get out of the farm. They had all the different things that happened on their journey, so that we didn't even talk about. So they found the bears, then they had the river where Sassy almost drowned, and then she gets found by a human, gets nursed back to health by an old man, and then she leaves, finds them.
She just like ditches him. That poor old man, he's obviously lonely out there in the woods. She's just chilling on his lap, accepting his affection and his goat's milk, and then she's like, peace. She doesn't even like, they don't even allow for a moment for her to like stop in the field and look behind and say, thank you, I'll miss you, or anything.
Yeah, that's
like,
strange.
No thanks.
But,
she just freaking leaves. And I was like, oh, I don't remember this. Maybe she like takes them back and they like have a meal and then they keep going. But no, she just
that
like
would have been
ditches
smart
this
too,
dude.
because that's the thing is they don't even mention that she was nursed back by a person. Like, you would think Chance and Shadow would want to go back, and like that guy would have fed them, and they were both super hungry. Like, while they were gone, like, and they even had this is crazy. So they actually had like a conversation, just assuming that she died, and Chance was like, "It wasn't your fault, Shadow," and Shadow's like, "It was totally my fault. It was my responsibility." So anyway, they do that with the old man, and then they go and do the mountain lion thing, and then they do the porcupine thing, and then they go and find a lost child in the woods. They find like a little girl. And then they get taken to the shelter, and Chance freaks out, thinking it's a pound and bad things are going to happen. The cat, Sassy, she gets away from the animal handlers before they actually get them into the shelter. And then she breaks in to rescue them. So there's a whole rescue scene. And during that point, there's a point where she's walking around and all the dogs are catcalling her and be like construction workers in New York City. Like, hey, girl, what's up? Oh, look at her, kind of thing. And then it turns out that the animal shelter calls the family, says, hey, come and get it. They just barely miss the family. Then they go in this construction yard, and Shadow gets hurt, and then they have this big, like, you can do it, get out of here, like, you know, you've been pushing us this whole time, you're just going to give up. And then there's the reunion scene. Like, so much happened in this movie, and it was only 88 minutes. Like, all of it flew by, but none of it seemed to fly by.
Yeah, and that's because with a human performance, you have all this stuff that's happening. I mean, people, they emote with their voices, with their faces, with their body language. There's so much that a human actor can do to emote and make a scene dynamic and interesting. Whereas with this, you're just looking at animals that, yeah, they move and they puppet them a little bit. But for the most part, you're losing all of that emotion and most of the body language that you have from a human performance.
Exactly.
So they had to pad it with all of these little plot points and all kinds of action just to make it feel like something. It's not even watchable. Like, it probably got close to watchable. Apparently, Roger Ebert thought it was watchable, but I don't.
At least with a cartoon, they can animate gestures and...
Well, and cartoon animals have eyebrows.
Yeah.
Because you need that to make it interesting. Otherwise, if you can't see these emotions on their faces that eyebrows provide, you're losing so much from a performance, and it just looks weird and boring. So, we are relieved that they did not animate their mouths to talk.
I'm not sure.
Because also, like, creepy things happen with their teeth when they do that. Like, they always give them, like, creepy human teeth. But
that's true.
Do we think that maybe animated eyebrows could have lent something to the performance?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, maybe. So
I think we need to hit up one of our CG friends and test this theory.
Oh, man, that'd be pretty funny. As I was saying, like, you didn't like this movie as a kid. You didn't like it now, so clearly this didn't ruin your childhood.
Here's the thing. I remember hating that the animals were just sitting there stagnant and, like, clearly being directed by their handlers to, like, do these motions, but you could see in their eyes that those emotions were not there.
Exactly.
And this dialogue was just being attributed to them. Kind of like when people hold up their infants and they're like, "Mommy loves me," and, like, no, your baby is not thinking that. They are thinking of food and what is this blurry thing? Stop it.
Okay.
So that's what bothered me about it. But I remember watching it all the way through several times, and I don't think I actually hated the storyline. So I was hoping that I would be able to revisit it and find some of this quirky charm or feel good. But no, it actually made it worse, and it did ruin it for me.
Yeah, so I remember liking this movie. I remember I remember the plot of this one more. I do remember watching the San Francisco one with my brother quite a bit. I don't really remember if I liked this movie, but I didn't have it like a negative memory of it. So I think this is the dark side of this podcast. It's the first time we've kind of been like, no, this doesn't hold up.
No, it does
Watching
not.
something we really don't want to watch. Like within the first 15 minutes of this, I really want to just turn it off.
Yeah. If you have warm, fuzzy memories of this movie, do not watch it because it will ruin your childhood.
I think this is the first time that our childhood's been ruined.
It was bound to happen.
Was that a pun on the title? Next week, we're going to be watching one of my favorite movies as a child. I actually bought this movie on Blu-ray on Black Friday, I want to say about a year, maybe 2 years ago. And I've been trying to get you to watch it for a couple of years, and you've refused. So now
I never even watched it all the way through as a kid.
Yeah, so this podcast, I haven't even said what the movie is yet, Katrina. Ugh. But this podcast is giving me a reason to force Katrina to watch one of my favorite movies as a child, the Michael Jordan vehicle, Space Jam. The live-action sports movie with the Looney Tunes in it, a la like Who Framed Roger Rabbit kind of thing. I'm really excited. I loved that movie as a kid.
I don't like live action with cartoons interspersed. No. It's not my thing.
Space Jam's great. I can't wait to watch it. It has Bill Murray, isn't it? You can't be all bad if Bill Murray's in it, although he did do Garfield. But we're going to not talk about Garfield.
Bill Murray's a jerk. All right, Michael. I'd say that is episode 4 of Ruin My Childhood. And this one definitely ruined my childhood. Thanks for listening, all of you out there in the internet. You can find me on all social media platforms at Katrina Ossity. And how about you, Mike?
You can follow the podcast, both Ruin My Childhood and Remake Rewind on Instagram and Twitter at MDXpods. Also check out our website at MDXpods.com. And also check us out on Patreon if you like either of these two podcasts. Spare $1 to help us out, help us raise money to get better equipment and help fund other podcasts that we want to do. Once again, that's patreon.com/MDXpods. And if you can't do that, just like and share our content, tweet our episodes, put it on Facebook, whatever you do on social media, just share our stuff. It helps us out a lot.
Tell your friends.
We are officially on iTunes. Episode 3 went up before we were on iTunes.
Woohoo!
But we are officially on iTunes for Ruin My Childhood. So please rate us on iTunes, give us a 5-star review, and say something good about us.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you guys. Bye.